What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, we'll be talking about progressions, specifically secondary progressions. So, let's get into it. This episode was inspired basically by me using my astrological eyes. And I encourage everyone to do this, okay? And one of the reasons, if you know me, you've gotten a reading from me or anything, I'm big on meditation. Because I know it's a huge part of transforming from a logical person to a spiritual person, okay? As human beings, we all need to slow down, okay? And we need time to commune with ourselves. Meditation helps us do that. So I'm mentioning this because, like I said, I feel like the universe or my environment interacts with me in a way where I'm really able to see astrology in real time, okay? Like, I don't need to know a person's chart to see a placement like moon in the 5th house playing out or sun in the 1st house playing out, okay? So the difference between logic, you need to take the time to logically understand what the planets and houses mean and things within how they play out like that. But through things like meditation, you really get to absorb, right? Open up like your third eye, which everyone is fascinated with, and really get to see it play out. Okay, so like I said, that inspired me to talk about progressions because progressions are a really important part of astrology. And I do want to say this. If you are still in the baby stages of learning your own chart, of learning what planets, houses, and signs mean, don't worry about progressions just yet, okay? If you are of a certain age and you get an astrological reading, more than likely, depending on your level, I may not even mention it to you, but I'm using it to interpret what's going on within your life and, providing counsel through that, okay? But if crawl before you walk, don't bite off more than you can chew, all right? It has to go in stages, all right? So first thing you need to know about progressions is that there are 3 different kinds, okay? The first kind is primary directions, and this is a really mathematical approach to it, and I'm still young within the astro game myself, and this is best calculated with software and stuff like that, but I'm sure there's others out there who use this and it's said to be quite accurate, okay? Then you have what I prefer, secondary directions, and then you have solar arcs. And secondary and solar arcs are similar, but there's a huge difference between them. And I think solar arcs has validity. I can use it to arrive at the understanding, but it's not as clear to me as secondary directions. And basically, with the secondary directions, right? Your progressed energy, right? So let's say you're 30 years old. So the energy for your progressed chart within your 30th year is reflective of what the sky, right? Or where the planets were 30 days after your birth. I believe they call this a day for a year method, okay? So solar arcs are similar. However, what solar arcs does is it progresses every planet within the chart 1 degree every year. Okay? So, if you were born with Neptune at 10 degrees Capricorn in your 5th year of life, in your solar arc chart, Neptune's going to be at 15 degrees Neptune. Versus where in the secondary chart, the outer planets have minimum movement, and it really provides big emphasis on the quicker moving planets such as the sun, moon, Mercury, so on and so forth. All right, we know sun moves 1 degree per day. Moon moves about 12 to 13 degrees a day. Hence why it stays in each sign for 2.5 degrees. Each sign is 30 degrees. Okay, and you know Mercury moves fast as well and things like that. Okay, so what happens here is that the progressions offset major events that will occur within your life. So from a predictive standpoint, the astrologer, you, me, whoever, can use this to see, you know, what is to come, okay, or what is likely to happen. But there's a deeper aspect of it where you should look at where progressions is pretty cool. It indicates or is representative of your internal progression, okay? So I'll use myself as an example. I am a late degree Gemini sun by birth. So a couple years into my life, I progressed into being a Cancer sun and have been a progressed Cancer sun ever since. Okay? Now, in your natal chart, you are who you are, right? So I am a Gemini by trade, but internally in my own evolution, I've been dealing with the things of Cancer, the themes of Cancer, okay? And then where it is like in my natal chart as well, you know, that has proved to be a major emphasis for me internally, okay? And then it gets deeper because your moon, your progressed moon, which is our inner self, our emotional nature, is changing signs every 2 years, okay? So you're constantly going through these different phases. So how you can go to check this, I would say, look at where, check your progress chart for major events in your life. Like, you know, when you got into your first major relationship, if you've been married, okay, when you had your first child, okay, this is what how progressions play out. Now, so there's the internal aspect of it showing like how you are developing. I'll give, you know, another example with this. So how it interacts with transits in your natal chart is that the major events are triggered when they come into contact by aspect with natal, specifically natal or transiting planets, okay? So, you know, it's that time where people say, my biological clock is ticking, or you feel like you get to a certain age where you want to have a child. Now, for everyone, this is going to happen at different times, right? Some people may not plan it, but they end up having, you know, a kid at whatever time. One aspect that could play out, we could say, is that, let's say, natally, right? Natally, you have your moon within your 5th house, right? And this year, what is it? Jupiter's in Sagittarius this year, right? Let's say you have a 5th house moon in the sign of Sagittarius natally, okay? And then transit-wise, Jupiter is coming through that 5th house, okay? So the instinct is there. You may internally feel like, man, I feel like I want to have a kid, or you start thinking about children, or you get opportunities to work with children, whatever. This can manifest a whole lot of different ways, right? So then what happens is that at the same time, you could be having your lunar return, right? Your lunar return in the sense of progress-wise, the moon is back in that 5th house. This can signify you having a child that year, okay, or getting pregnant that year, and that becomes a huge theme for you, okay? So normally, speaking of like lunar returns, and it gets deeper, right? Then we have transiting wise, we have lunar returns too. So at the same time, when you have your lunar return by transit, that can signify the day you actually got pregnant. Okay? Like, the planets are always working in these mysterious ways. All right? So I hope all of that made sense. So I try to encompass the progress moon, right? The transiting moon, as well as the transiting planet. Okay? So different things will occur within the chart that manifests as big events within your life. Let's say you natally have Saturn in your 7th house, okay, and then your progressed Venus enters your natal 7th house. It conjuncts that Saturn, okay. This can signify marriage, okay, or maybe Pluto is there. That can, and a configuration occurs, whether it be a square from Pluto to Saturn and that Venus. That could signify divorce. Okay, so it's it offsets big events within our lives, but at the same time, it shows where we are internally, where our minds are going. You know, how we evolve. Okay. So like I said, you can do the same thing with solar arcs. It's just if you're born with, Neptune in one sign and then the Neptune's in a whole other sign, that may be a little strange. But like I said, you can still arrive at that answer as well. Okay? The next big thing when considering progressed planets are when planets turn retrograde, or they go direct. So let's say you were born with a Mercury retrograde, right? And then 15 years after you were born, or 15 days after you were born, right? Mercury decided to go direct. That's going to signify a huge change within you. You may feel like, okay, I don't feel this restriction with, this planet or this energy anymore. It's kind of opened up, okay? Or if it's going retrograde in the progressed chart, you can find yourself internalizing that now. So that's why I said it shows how you change, for the most part, okay? Whether you become more extroverted or introverted and things like that. So there's a lot when you really get into progressions that you can really learn. And like I said, this is the more predictive side of astrology. So if you're at a certain point where you feel comfortable, with your understanding your own natal and transits and things like that, without question, look into your progressed chart, especially like if you're a person who was born with your sun at like 15 degrees of a sign. Okay, so 15 years in, your sun changed signs. Okay, and that's another huge transformation within you when your natal sun changes signs. And depending on how long you live in life, you may get to experience up to 2 signs, 2 or 3 signs of progressions. All right. So y'all, this is my episode about the progressed chart and progressed energy. Feel free to let me know what you think. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, feel free to do so. If you need a reading, holla at me. So next time, peace.